And good morning and welcome to Wake Up America. It is Tuesday, November the 10th. I'm Rob Schmidt. There's a teleprompter. Another busy day, another busy news day coming up here. We have a DOJ bombshell as Attorney General Bill Barr decides to investigate election irregularities. All this with the sworn affidavits coming out from these people. Poll workers, postal workers saying that a lot of bad stuff happened in this election. We're going to get to all that. Also, could you be getting a COVID-19 vaccine before Christmas? An update on some incredibly promising news coming out of Pfizer, also from Eli Lilly today. All of this under Donald Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Things are heating up in the COVID department, and that is good news. But first, we're going to begin with White House correspondent Emerald Robinson and the latest on our top story, this big decision by Bill Barr. Emerald, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Rob. Yeah, it's going to be a busy day, so let's catch you up on the busy day that yesterday was to get you started. Well, the Trump campaign did announce a lawsuit that they filed in Pennsylvania yesterday. They made that announcement during a press conference at the RNC headquarters on Capitol Hill behind me. Now, what they are asking for is an injunction that would stop the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania and 7 counties from certifying the election. What they're alleging in that lawsuit is that there were 2 different standards for those who voted in person and those who voted by mail. They're also saying that they weren't allowed to have poll watchers for the tabulation of some ballot dumps, and that was very concerning to them. Something that White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who was doing the press conference in her personal capacity, she said to the media, chastised them for essentially ignoring. Listen.
You don't take these positions because you want an honest election. You don't oppose an audit of the vote because you want an accurate count. You don't oppose our efforts at sunlight and transparency because you have nothing to hide. You take these positions because you are welcoming fraud and you are welcoming illegal voting.
Now, 4 state attorneys general are also supporting the fight for the president in Pennsylvania, submitting an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, asking it to take up and rule on the 3-day extension for mail-in voting that the campaign is contesting. And as you said, Attorney General William Barr has weighed in on all of this for the first time. He sent a memo to 3 different divisions of the DOJ and FBI Director Christopher Wray, allowing for or suggesting that there should now be a probe to look into any voting irregularities. Now, he said in that memo, quote, that now that the voting has concluded, it is imperative that American people can trust that our elections were conducted in such a way that the outcomes accurately reflect the will of the voters. Just before he made this announcement, a little earlier in the day, though, Rob, interestingly, he paid a visit to Majority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell, who had been hesitant himself to voice support for the president in his fight. After that visit, the leader shortly took to the Senate floor where he had this to say. Listen.
Our institutions are actually built for this. We have the system in place to consider concerns, and President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
Now, Rob, that's the first time we've really heard the majority leader voice such avid support for the president in his fight. Also interesting to note, Vice President Mike Pence will be on the Hill today for a 1 p.m. lunch with Senate Republicans. So probably more news coming out of that.
Yeah, I imagine there is. And also, you know, we saw overnight that this guy, Richard Pilger, who works in this department where they're going to be doing the investigating of whatever's happening with these elections, decides to resign. Of course, the media goes nuts with this story. But then I saw Rick Grinnell point out that this guy was actually involved in the IRS scam where they targeted the conservative organizations a few years ago. He's a big-time liberal, and he definitely has partisan views. I'm wondering how he's even still working in that department after that scam.
Well, look, Rob, it's not just Richard Pilger. There's also other people that the Trump campaign are concerned about when you go to look at the DOJ possibly conducting probes that they say have conflicting interests for their support for Democrats. And we could go into several more names. Pilger was one of those, though, that particular Trump lawyer Harmeet Dillon, who's often on Newsmax, had highlighted as being problematic in that position, considering the kind of evidence or contest that he's going to have to weigh through any of these probes or prosecutions that might arise from them. So it's interesting that you say there's still people there. That's one of the major complaints that I hear from Trump supporters is that despite the Trump administration talking about draining the swamp, a lot of those people, particularly at the DOJ, who were, antagonistic towards Republicans or more partisan, are still in place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to drain the swamp because you got to get somebody else to work there after you do. Yeah.
That's true.
All right. Emerald, good to see you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. For more now, let's turn to former White House counsel Jeanine Bresso, who also used to chair the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. Perfect person to talk to about this. Jeanine, welcome to you. We had this big thing come out yesterday that Bill Barr is going to look into this. What do you make of it?
I applaud it. I think it's very important. Yeah. Look, American people need to have confidence in our election system, not only now, but in the future. And the fact that we have the Attorney General Bill Barr looking into this is very important because we have record number of voting irregularities and incidences that are being reported this cycle. It's important that we get the facts of the case and that we know exactly what is going on to ensure there's confidence in the system.
Absolutely. I want to go back to this guy that resigned in response to this because a lot of the media is taking this as an indication that this is all nonsense, that this is all partisan. This gentleman, Richard Pilger, who stepped down, he was slated to aid in this voter fraud investigation, but he obviously has partisan beliefs here. He obviously is quite a liberal person and is not going to be happy about this investigation, right?
Well, absolutely, if that's true, and certainly he should not be at the helm working this. We need people that are going to go and have a nonpartisan, clear investigation of what went on. Look, we have a legal landscape that is unprecedented right now. Not only, is the Trump campaign filing lawsuits as they should to ensure that we have integrity in the process and the rule of law is followed. Prior to the election, you had over 300 election-related lawsuits filed across the country where a vast majority of them were by the left and their liberal allies seeking to make wholesale changes to the elections process and to remove important safeguards like voter ID requirements that states had in place, witness signature requirements, etc. And now we see what the results of that is, and certainly everything should be investigated.
I mean, you worked in this. I mean, you're U.S. Election Assistance Commission. I mean, tell us. I mean, can stuff like this happen? I mean, I think a lot of Americans are just completely in the dark about what can happen in this process. But when you have all these different counties and all these different states with their own rules and their own agendas sometimes, what can happen to an election?
Well, certainly, there have been reports since I've been involved in elections throughout the year with my work on the Hill, with the Worked Election Assistance Commission. But I will tell you, when you have Democrat counties and then you have Democrat states attorneys and whatever, there's not much interest to investigate these voter irregularities and incidents of fraud. So now is the time that we do have a full-on investigation and a legal examination of everything that is on the table.
I agree.
To ensure that we have an accurate count and all legal votes count.
Yeah, and that something's not going on. I mean, obviously, a lot of people, aren't believing in the system this time, and they see that they think that there could be a problem here. I mean, you have, the media points out that there's no hard evidence at this time. All you have are people making claims, but these claims are coming from people like this guy Jesse Jacob. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, but it's a Detroit city employee who signed this sworn affidavit saying that they watched people coaching voters to vote for Joe Biden. They were told to not look at signatures. I mean, this is somebody that was doing the vote counting, that was in the game in the city of Detroit, saying that they were told not to look at signatures, don't compare to the signature that they have on file, and to falsely backdate ballots. You also have a postal worker from the state of Pennsylvania, another huge state that was very close, Richard Hopkins, a sworn affidavit here saying that he was told to pick up late ballots and deliver them so that they could be counted. I mean, these are sworn affidavits. These are people that are coming out publicly and swearing to something like this. Their jobs are on the line. This first person works for the city of Detroit. The other person works for the Postal Service. I mean, that is evidence. I mean, if you're putting your butt on the line for something like this, I mean, that means something to all the people in the media screaming that there's no evidence of this, that it's just a right-wing conspiracy theory.
No, absolutely. It is evidence. And, I know there are claims out there that these are unsubstantiated. But I will say, I think your viewers should know that during the fall, this fall Congress, Representative Massey of Kentucky did introduce an amendment to a bill, H.R. 801, which was, for the nonpartisan nonpartisan Postmaster General bill, which put restrictions on political activity. But he had an amendment that would make it illegal to use Service equipment to backdate postmarks on the envelopes of mail ballots. Now, all the Democrats on that committee voted against it. And this committee, the House Oversight and Reform Committee, is populated with AOC in the squad, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, et cetera. And I encourage all your viewers to contact these members because they need to ask the question, why would you vote against this? Why would you make it, not make it legal?
Yeah, well, whatever's in somebody's political interest is what they're going to vote for. That's the sad thing. Even if it's the worst thing in the world, if it's going to help them politically, they're going to do it. Let's listen to Kayleigh McEnany talk about the ballots.
You don't take these positions because you want an honest election. You don't oppose an audit of the vote because you want an accurate count. You don't oppose our efforts at sunlight and transparency because you have nothing to hide. You take these positions because you are welcoming fraud and you are welcoming illegal voting.
I mean, you put the shoe on the other foot. If this was in a red state and they were forcing Democrat poll watchers out and they were boarding up the glass so that you couldn't see in the windows of what was going on in there, and then Donald Trump won the state, can you imagine what the media would be saying right now?
It would be complete outrage. I mean, they accuse Republicans time and time again of being vote suppressors. Now you have these people suppressing our ability to be able to observe the process. You need transparency. And I agree with you. They would be clamoring outside the doors with protests.
Of course they would be. It's so obvious. All right. Janine, thank you so much. Great to see you. Appreciate the time. Coming up, the Peach State, Georgia, getting ready for two big Senate races. We're taking a look. These are very important. There's only 2-seat swing right now in the Senate anyway. That's coming up after the break. You're watching Wake Up America live here on Newsmax. Stay tuned.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Okay, welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Rob Schmidt. Beautiful day here in New York, Tuesday here in early November. We've got our minds, though, on the state of Georgia today, as does a lot of the country. The Peach State is gearing up for not one, but two massive, very important Senate runoff elections. And joining me now to talk about this, Jody Hice, the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Government Operations in the great state of Georgia. Sir, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. Obviously, the Senate as it stands right now, by my count, is at 50-48 in the Republicans' hands. These two seats are critically important. This could bring a tie in the Senate, which means that if Joe Biden gets the presidency, Kamala Harris would be the 51, and they would have control. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you're right, Rob. And as a result, Georgia is becoming the epicenter of this Senate election. There's no question about that. There's going to be tons of activity over the next 8 weeks or so here in Georgia, and we're obviously gearing up for that. In the meantime, we're still in the midst of a recount on, it's about to get underway, a recount on the presidential election. So a lot of activity happening here in the state of Georgia on elections across the board, and all of them are critically important.
Yeah. I mean, you have to get to that 50% mark to not have a runoff, which was tough news for David Perdue. He would have had it if not for that rule. But tell us about each of these races. Let's start off with the Perdue Jon Ossoff race. How do you see this faring, I believe, in January, right?
Yeah, it is January. And look, I believe that we're going to win both of these. But David Perdue, in particular, I think is in extremely good shape. He, at this point, at least narrowly, did not get narrowly avoided a runoff. He just is barely under 50%. And there again, who knows? A recount may reverse that. We'll see how that goes. But Kelly Loeffler as well. I believe both of them are going to win, but it's going to be a fight to the very end.
Yeah, the Loeffler race was Loeffler, Warnock, and Collins. Tell us just the latest on that one from what you see.
Well, again, I think it's going to, at this point, what has to happen, Rob, is bringing everyone together and unify. Collins and Loeffler had a very intense battle, as you all know, and so at this point, bringing everyone together and say, listen, this is critically important not only for our state, but for our nation, and we've got to get behind Kelly at this point. Everyone, even those who are supporters of Doug Collins, has to come on board at this point, and let's get behind Kelly. And I believe that's going to happen.
All right. So Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who would be the Republicans if Republicans win both seats, are calling on Georgia's Secretary of State, a guy named Brad Raffensperger, to resign. He's defending, though, his office's handling of this election at this point. Why are they asking for him to resign? What's happening here?
Well, it's been a debacle, as we all know, what's happened in Georgia. And quite frankly, largely, this is because the Secretary of State brought this on himself. When you send out to every registered voter in the state, which they did, and of course we know that the voter registration lists are inaccurate, anywhere from 5 to 10%. But nonetheless, against the counsel of many, Secretary of State Raffensperger sent out automatically to every registered voter an opportunity to vote by absentee ballot.
Yeah.
Result, we've got who knows how many of these ballots ended up coming back from people who don't live in the state, who are deceased or whatever, and it's created the mess that we're in now. And so that is why, as we all know, there is going to be a recount. This is a razor-thin race, and Doug Collins now is going to be heading up that recount. And just today, I can tell you, he has already called for there to be a hand count. We've got to have an accurate count, and I can also tell you that the Republican Georgia delegation, including our two newest members, are all in agreement with that as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. I've got a friend of mine was talking about that he lives in California. He said everybody out there got the same thing. You get the absentee ballot automatically sent to you. And he was saying that he can't see a way where he wouldn't be able to vote twice in his state. I'm wondering if you see any possibility of that in the state of Georgia as well, where he doesn't think there's anything that would prevent him from voting twice and for them both to be counted. You vote absentee and then you go to the polls on election day and do the same thing. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's a very serious concern, and we've got to find out. That's why we need a hand count, and that's why we're all calling on the Secretary of State to give us a hand count now. Let's get an accurate assessment of what actually happened. If you put all these ballots back into the machine is just going to count the ballot, and we're going to get the same issue that we have now. And in fact, we know that some of the machines here in Georgia had glitches in them. So let's get a hand count. Let's find out if there were any who tried to double vote or if there were any other, for whatever reason, ineligible ballots.
Yeah.
We've got to deal with that. We've got to resolve this thing once for all. And but you bring up a valid point, and we're calling on the Secretary of State to give a hand count, and let's resolve this issue.
All right. Well, early January, two major Senate runoffs, and in those races lies the balance of power in the Senate. If Democrats happen to win them both, they get control of the Senate. If Republicans can hold just one, they will have control, and that is huge going into the next 2 years. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Rob.
All right. Fireworks in London celebrating something, but were they for Joe Biden? More on a big global mix-up. It's a pretty funny story when we come back.
When important people
that President Trump has taken with respect to China
need to speak.
And we passed the toughest sanctions on North Korea.
They speak.
So I can only tell you what I know and what my recommendation.
What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow. Bring a better day.
He's already healed the world. Joe Biden thanking the nation and the world for their support. Other networks quick to speak about apparent parties erupting for Joe Biden around the world, specifically in London. Even ABC News putting out a tweet saying that there's fireworks going off in London, all because of Joe Biden's victory. Let's take a look here.
We saw fireworks in London. This is indeed a moment the world is watching, and he has heard more from world leaders than he has from the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Fireworks were set off, celebrating the historic win. Let's take this in.
In reality, the celebration in London was actually for something called Bonfire Night that they do across the pond. It's an annual fireworks display that lights up the sky every November, even those Novembers when Joe Biden isn't declared the victor of an election, one, by the way, that Newsmax hasn't called yet. So, no, London wasn't celebrating Joe Biden's apparent victory with fireworks, as the media would have you believe. We got a kick out of that. All right, let's talk about something important here, because this is a really big story. Pfizer's big news yesterday that its experimental coronavirus vaccine is more than 90% effective. Huge news. It's signaling a major breakthrough in the war against COVID-19. It comes as this virus, at least the cases, are spiking around the world. For the very latest on the virus and this potential vaccine, let's bring in our resident doctor, David Samadi, with an early house call for Newsmax. Doctor, good to see you. I mean, how encouraged are you by this news?
Good to be with you, Bob. This is actually a game changer. We've been waiting for this for many months. A lot of people need to give credit to President Trump and especially Vice President. So many people on social media are telling me that Pfizer is not part of this warp speed project. But what they don't understand is that without the support of the federal fundings, and once you have the vaccine, you have to distribute millions and millions of this vaccine out there. So without the support of the government, Pfizer is not going to be able to go anywhere. So this is a joint venture between the private and the public business groups that were able to bring the FDA and multi-companies. This is a German company, BioNTech, as well as Pfizer, that were able to bring this vaccine. It's 90% effective, as you said. We need to go after nursing home, people that are really vulnerable, the elderly, where this virus is going after. And as they predicted that we have this in November, we're going to have about 50 million doses of this by December. And as we turn 2021, Bob, we're going to have about 1.5 billion doses of this vaccine. It's very promising, great news, especially with the numbers going up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about, I think even Fauci said by the end of the year, we could be seeing this thing rolled out, people getting the vaccine before the end of the year. It's already, early November. That's crazy. One person not too happy about it, a person who only cares about politics and not about COVID-19 at all, is New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo, who says he's very concerned about the timing of the vaccine rollout. Take a listen to this.
The good news is the Pfizer tests look good and we'll have a vaccine shortly. The bad news is that it's about 2 months before Joe Biden takes over, and that means this administration is going to be implementing a vaccine plan. The vaccine plan is very important, and it's probably the most ambitious undertaking since COVID began. The Trump administration is rolling out the vaccination plan, and I believe it's flawed.
Is the reason why this vaccine came out so fast. Warp speed has worked tremendously well. They've got a plan to get the military involved in getting it out to people. The plan looks great. Cuomo.
And we're going to get the Army to really distribute these doses. This is going to open up our economy. It's going to open up the restaurants. People have been hurting for many months, and I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel, Rob, and this is great news for America. The only thing about this is that they have to get 2 shots about 3 weeks apart. Yeah. This has to be refrigerated to minus 90 degree Fahrenheit. But other than that, I think, it's a great news. And by the way, there are 2 other companies that probably will come up with different type of vaccine. All great news in the battle against this virus.
I read something about this thing, though. It has something to do with your DNA, that this vaccine, the way it's made, can change your DNA. I'm not a doctor, but have you heard anything like that?
No, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff going online, but look, this is an RNA vaccine. This is not a Trump vaccine. This is going through many different scientific clinical trials. About 43,000 people have volunteered. There's a third party that's looking over this. So for some people just don't like any vaccines. I understand that. They don't even get flu vaccine. I get this. But if we have something that's 90% effective, especially if it can cover the elderly, the nursing home, people who are at risk, this is a game changer, Rob.
Yeah, 90%, by the way, to those of you at home, apparently that is just a crazy number for an effective rate for a vaccine, right, Doctor?
That's true. Yes, we didn't expect this. We were thinking about maybe 50 to 60%.
Right.
But this is really a great outcome, and can't wait to stop talking about lockdown. Can't wait to stop talking about masks. Mandatory mask is probably not the cure for this problem.
Yeah.
While people have to be careful about social distancing and masks at this point, hopefully with these vaccines we can put end to this and we can start our life again like the way we know it. Not the real norm, but the old American style.
Absolutely. I'm so sick of wearing this stupid mask. Let's talk about Eli.
We're posting all these videos, Rob, on our Instagram, and we're going to put a lot of information out there because we can't post anything on Twitter, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and we all know why. Let's talk about Eli Lilly here for a second, too, because they also have some good news that came out even more recently. The last 24 hours has just been huge for COVID-19. Eli Lilly with an antibody therapy. Essentially, it kickstarts the immune response. This is after you've already gotten sick with COVID, right?
Yes, that's also like very similar concept like Regeneron, where we can actually boost your immune system. So from every angle, we're going after this virus. This is like what we've been waiting for such a long time, and people were getting disappointed by this. Not only we are going to be able to give you the vaccine to boost your antibodies, now even if you have recovered from this, we can boost your immune system to protect you. Remember that we're talking about these antibodies maybe lasting 4 to 6 months, and now we can basically boost that in order to get maybe longer protection as well as T-cell immunity, which is going to last much longer than some of these antibodies with a new vaccine, hopefully in the next month or so. So all the clinical trials that Vice President Pence and President Trump pushed, it's all coming to become mature, and we're getting the result of all of their hard work in the last year.
It's something else. Cheers to Operation Warp Speed, to the administration, to Pfizer, to Eli Lilly, which is headquartered in my hometown, Indianapolis, Indiana. And, sir, doctor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
All right. Coming up, much more here on Wake Up America, live here on Newsmax. We'll be right back with a look at something we know a lot about around here, our flawed media. Stay tuned.
A liberty-loving American takes on Washington, Hollywood, and the whole media establishment. He's Chris Salcedo. Join his fight. Tune in to The Chris Salcedo Show every weekday afternoon on Newsmax.
All right, welcome back to Wake Up America on this Tuesday, November 10th. I'm Rob Schmidt. We are talking about voter fraud with somebody who knows a thing or two about controversial elections. Joining us now is former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, as well as President Trump, John Brown of Fraser Brown and Mayer LLC. Sir, thank you for joining us. Interestingly enough, you were a ballot counter in 2000 in the state of Florida. That's something. Give us some insight into how all of this works and what we're seeing right now.
Well, then this was conducted, as you say, in 2000 for the Gore George W. Bush election with the hanging chads.
Right.
There was an observer from each party and a counter from each party. And we were put in little booths around a central sort of stage where the legal people were, and they could monitor and come and talk to people if there was a legal question, give a decision if there was a query. The counters actually counted, and then the observers sat behind the counters looking over right between them. And every single ticket was shown either side of it by the counters, so you could see very clearly each ticket. And it was extremely well run, and I think very, very fair and proper transparency.
It's unbelievable. Compare that to what we're seeing in the state of Pennsylvania in this election with people like you, the ballot counters and the people that are supposed to be watching over this being kept out. How big of a deal is this?
Well, it's a huge deal. I mean, I could also refer back to votes in England. I fought in just under 20 elections, both as a candidate and supporting friends. Each candidate is allowed about 20 observers, and they can roam at will around the count. They first of all watch the ballot boxes come in as they're unloaded, and the votes are counted as they come out of the box, that they tally the figures. Then they watch the votes being opened and then piled in piles for each candidate and then counted and then tallied again for the votes. each time the observers are free to look right over the shoulders of people operating, and it's very open. What has happened this time in Pennsylvania, first of all, I was absolutely shocked to see the parts of the counting area with cardboard in the windows. I mean, if you've got nothing to hide, why not allow it to be completely open?
Exactly.
Then the counters were kept at a distance, even 6 feet. How can you see the markings on a ballot paper? So there's two types of the challenges now, and there's two types of challenge. One is common sense, where the bloggers are showing lots and lots of evidence, individual evidence of fraud. But more important, the algorithms that the Western countries put on elections around the world to ensure first elections are showing massive fraud. And so there's the sort of common sense area. Then there's the legal proof, which will be required in going to court. But of course, that takes time. There's time for discovery, for the preparation of documents and affidavits and a case. So we're looking at weeks of delay. And then, of course, you have the state legislatures. I mean, like Pennsylvania, where the state legislatures ordered a certain form of counting and everything else, and mail ballots and so on, and when they would be accepted, but the governor overrode it. And so that's another legal question. So the thing is wrapped up in legality. I think it's going to go on for weeks, could be settled by the Supreme Court, could even go to Congress in the end, where, interestingly enough, it's one vote majority.
Yeah, this is all something else. My favorite thing you said, exactly what was going on to verify that there was nothing screwy happening, and they're not letting it happen in this election. And that is, despite what all the rest of the media and the Democrats say, that's a huge deal. John Brown.
Legalized fraud.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and that's why we're talking about it. Great to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. More news ahead here on Newsmax. We'll be right back.
If you've had it with the old news
and the same spent,
well, then Spicer & Company's your place
for the inside story
and for the facts that you need to know.
The wind whispered through the forest. A storm is coming. I am the storm, the great American grizzly. Introducing the original Trumpy Bear, the fearless, super plush American grizzly. Trumpy Bear was born June 14th, Flag Day. Just find the secret zipper and pull out the American flag-themed blanket. Show your patriotism and proudly display Trumpy on any American holiday.
God bless America, and God bless Trumpy Bear.
American industry once ruled the world, and now we're back on track again. Thank you, Trumpy Bear.
Trumpy Bear sits proudly at the front of the motorcycle and loves to cruise with his brother.
I'm a former Marine, and I'm proud to have Trumpy Bear ride by my side. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
When I saw Trumpy Bear, I knew I had to have him. He's a fighter just like me.
Some firehouses have Dalmatians. We have Trumpy Bear.
I've been in law enforcement for over 4 years, and I love my Trumpy Bear. Trumpy Bear always has my back. When I go on patrol, I'm rolling with Trumpy Bear.
I'm a small business owner, and business is great again. Thank you, Trumpy Bear.
Yeah, thank you, Trumpy Bear.
People know me as Frankie the Broom. I own my own commercial cleaning service. My business is doing great. Thank you, Trumpy Bear.
When I ride with Trumpy Bear, he makes my golf game great again. Thank you, Trumpy Bear.
Order the Super Plush Trumpy Bear for only 2 payments of $19.95 and receive a special certificate of authenticity. Call now or log on to find out how you can get the Trumpy Bear Golf Club cover. Don't miss out on owning a piece of American history. Trumpy, the most fearless bear anywhere. Order now.
To order your Trumpy Bear for 2 payments of $19.95 plus $6.95 shipping and handling, call 1-800-521-7948. That's 1-800-521-7948. Or you can go online at thetrumpybear.com.
Okay, welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Rob Schmidt. Emma is joining me here just for the last few minutes, and then she's going to be on from 9 to noon Eastern Time. A quick reminder, though, if you got your phone, the Newsmax app is free if you want to download it. And you can watch all of our shows right on your phone. And the great thing about this, the thing I love the most about Newsmax is you don't have to type in, they ask you, who's your service provider? Yep. Oh, it's Verizon Fios. Oh, it's whatever, Time Warner. They don't ask you for any of that. You just flip the app open, no matter who you are, it just pops up and you're watching TV like that. It's not like all the other ones. It's a pain in the butt. This one's really easy. We hope you check it out and watch us on your phone or on your computer
We were trending.
or TV.
We were trending at the App Store just the other day, too. So clearly a lot of people interested in downloading the app.
You give people something easy and free, they're gonna use it. That's one thing I know. All right, let's take a look at some of these headlines coming up here. We're going to start with the first story here, unless I forgot it. Did I write it down? The first story is going to be Neil Cavuto kind of silencing Kayleigh McEnany in the press conference, pulling out of the press conference, saying that she was making unsubstantiated claims, and going to commercial break after that. What'd you make of that?
So how I view it is we always like to hear people make their case, right? And in order to do so, you actually have to let them talk. So instead of saying there's no evidence of voter fraud, how about you listen to Kayleigh McEnany actually present the evidence?
Right.
And I think we do have that soundbite of the scene playing out. Let's play that so everyone can watch.
We want an honest, accurate, lawful count. We want maximum sunlight. We want maximum transparency. We want every legal vote to be counted, and we want every illegal vote to be...
Well, I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging, the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this.
I think basically what she was alleging is that stuff stinks here. You've got these sworn affidavits from people that say bad things happened, and you've got one side that doesn't want to hear anything of it, wants it all to be completely ignored. Yeah. I do think that's a fair statement, and I don't think she should have gotten cut off.
Well, I think she was getting to it.
Yeah, she was.
Right?
Yeah, she was.
You want to steal this evidence, you're getting to it.
Yeah.
And again, we go back to the 2016 election. We had heard questions of election integrity for 4 years. And now no one wants to question it?
Absolutely.
No one's going to hear the thoughts about it?
No, I know. It does stink. Let's talk about this. We lost Alex Trebek a couple of days ago. It's a sad moment. Everybody watched Jeopardy. The show was huge. Well, now it looks like George Stephanopoulos, works over at ABC, is eyeing this job. And talk about the biggest shoes ever to fill.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, so many people tune in to watch Jeopardy. It just becomes part of your daily routine. And when something becomes part of your daily routine, you absolutely feel the loss when someone passes.
Right.
And, just an incredible man. So intelligent, too. Huge shoes to fill.
Huge shoes to fill. No matter who takes it, it doesn't matter. Those ratings are coming down. It's just one of those things. It's just the way it's going to be. Finally, the last story we want to talk about here. Did you know that the Olympics, the Winter Olympics for 2022, are scheduled to be in Beijing, China? This is a country that over the last couple of years, their reputation has gotten worse and worse and worse. It's essentially basically an awful regime running a country of more than 1 billion people. For them to be rewarded with an Olympics doesn't sound good, and people are boycotting this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we will see what happens here. But again, you've got to keep in mind who's hosting these events, and whether you want to support them financially, because this is a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, this is a country that, however COVID, if it was made in a lab or if it just popped up organically, we don't know. It looks like it came out of a lab, but they knew about it. They stopped all their domestic travel within their country to protect themselves while just letting this virus spread around the world. They did it intentionally. There's no question about it. It's a bad regime. To give them an Olympics, not a good idea, in my opinion.
All right, Rob Schmidt, always a pleasure.
Emma, good to see you. We'll see you in an hour. Take care.
And here's your Newsmax News Minute. Joe Biden will speak from Delaware later today on health care issues. Biden will speak on what he claims could be at stake for families and his plan to expand access to health care. It comes as the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on an Obamacare case today. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is the newest justice to sit on the bench. Attorney General Bill Barr says the Justice Department can investigate allegations of voting irregularities in the 2020 election. The DOJ released a memo saying the claims had to be specific and not far-fetched or speculative. President Trump and his lawyer Rudy Giuliani have filed many lawsuits claiming voter fraud in certain states. And NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine says he will resign and not work for a potential Joe Biden administration. Those are some of your headlines. For breaking news, head to Newsmax.com.
Welcome to it. It is Tuesday, 1 week after, exactly 1 week after Election Day, and we are still no closer to getting a president of the United States. The rest of the races down ballot are starting to take shape. Beijing Biden has created something. He's taken this out of the Obama playbook, the office of the president-elect. It's nothing. It's a fabrication. It's not recognized by anybody, but it's designed to give him the imprimatur of already being president. And they're already at some news agencies pretending as if the current president doesn't exist. The one who's still making decisions and the one who has still not been proven to be ousted. Let me get to our top stories before we dig into anything else, because there's been a significant development, I think, a recognition by the aggregator of polls, that's Real Clear Politics. They have pulled back their call on Pennsylvania. Now, they still, like many other responsible news organizations, have not called Arizona. By the way, the spread in Arizona is about 15,000 votes. There's still 2% of the vote left to count. This Arizona is doing exactly what Team Trump said it would be doing. Meanwhile, AG Barr has authorized the Department of Justice to probe what is being called extensive voter fraud allegations. And of course, that's only right and proper from a Department of Justice. If there are indications of rampant voter fraud, that has to be addressed. Fox News is joining MSNBC and CNN of the process now of censoring the current administration, even so far as to not listening to the White House press secretary and cutting her off. I'll explain that later on in the program. Meanwhile, Beijing Biden is out there. He's claiming to be part of an office of the president-elect, which, again, not a thing. It's not real. It's just something that's made up. It sounds something like somebody over at CNN cooked up to give Biden some sort of credibility. Let me tell you what he's doing, though. He's talking about executive orders. He's talking about mask mandates. And by the way, he's putting together a China virus task force. This on the heels of President Trump announcing that one of the drug makers has announced a vaccine that will be 90% effective. That's preliminary data, but it sent stocks through the roof yesterday. Anyway, one of the guys on Biden's China virus task force is a guy by the name of Ezekiel Emanuel. Now, you folks who are senior citizens out there, you might want to pay attention. Ezekiel Emanuel wrote down some of his thoughts about what he feels about senior citizens. As you can see from MIT Technology Review, a doctor and medical ethicist argues that life after 75 is just not worth living. Now, you folks know the most vulnerable population for the China virus happens to be our elderly. Let me read a little bit more about this. This is, again, Beijing Biden's China virus task force. If we are cursed to be having him in the Oval Office in the third term of Barack Obama, a doctor and medical ethicist argues life after 75 is not worth living. Ezekiel Emanuel, the brother of Rahm Emanuel, the godfather of Chicago, he questions whether our consumption is worth our contribution in old age. Meaning, the guy who's been in charge of protecting you folks, the elderly people, from the China virus, wonders out loud whether or not you give back to society. And to all you senior citizens who pulled the lever for Beijing Biden, shame on all of you, knowing this is how that political party looks at you. Now, granted, if we are cursed to have him in the Oval Office, he will be the oldest occupier of the Oval Office ever sworn in. But see, that's how socialists work. It's justice for me and not for thee. He doesn't care really about all of you out there. That's why he would hire a guy by the name of Ezekiel Emanuel. By the way, about the vaccine, Cuomo of New York, this is a guy responsible for throwing China virus cases into nursing homes in the most vulnerable areas of our society, the aged, and responsible for thousands upon thousands of deaths And here he is yesterday seeming to play politics with the vaccine. Remember, as I said off the top, there's been a development with one of the vaccines. It's a two-doser. You got to take one, and then 21 days, 28 days later, you take another shot, and then it's supposed to be 90% effective. But have a listen to what Cuomo says about this welcome news, which sent stocks soaring and Americans' hopes soaring yesterday. But wait, always counted a Democrat socialist to throw cold water on American enthusiasm.
It's good news, bad news, George. The good news is the Pfizer tests look good and we'll have a vaccine shortly. The bad news is that it's about 2 months before Joe Biden takes over. And that means this administration is going to be implementing a vaccine plan.
Oh, I see. So maybe we ought to delay the distribution of the vaccine to when Beijing Biden allegedly takes over the Oval Office. And then that way he can get the credit for it, right, Cuomo? So if a couple of thousand more people have to die, or 3 or 4 or 5,000 in the interim, you're cool with that, right? Don't forget, Mr. Cuomo, it was President Donald Trump's Project Warp Speed that got this all done in record time, that you would still be navel-gazing, you and your political party, going through an old and antiquated process of red tape designed to keep things under wraps for 2 or 3 years. It was Operation Warp Speed by President Trump that got these vaccines to the fore right away, and promising support for these companies and distribution for these companies once success was achieved. Speaking of Biden, despite Real Clear Politics yanking their pull for Pennsylvania, which, by the way, in case you're all keeping track at home, according to the Real Clear Politics average, which is apparently more accurate than some of the predictions out there, Biden and Harris, their ticket has 259. President Trump has 214. According to the Real Clear Politics average, we're waiting on Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia to make calls, and Arizona, and even Alaska, to be fair. They're still counting out there. So Beijing Biden says, hey, you know what? Let's just go with the Fox totals. Fox is declaring me the winner. So let's just go ahead and go with Fox. And he has a message for all of you who want to make sure that extra votes, that illegal votes got counted and they shouldn't have been. He wants to make sure that those illegal votes count. And Beijing Biden wants to make sure that maybe some of you who cast legal votes and didn't get counted, he wants to make sure your votes never count. Here's Beijing Biden.
This election is over. It's time to put aside the partisanship and the rhetoric that designed to demonize one another. It's time to end the politicization of basic responsible public health steps like mask wearing and social distancing.
Social distancing.
We have to come together to heal the soul of this country so that we can effectively address this crisis.
Right. Mask wearing, social distancing. Our buddies at Just the News found a whole bunch of Biden supporters. And what were they doing around cities in America?
Massive crowds congregated in cities to celebrate Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's projected victory in the presidential election, despite COVID-19 restrictions on large gatherings. In New York City, Washington, D.C., and other areas, Biden supporters filled the streets over the weekend, and some were spotted without masks in the crowds. During the presidential campaign, Biden labeled President Trump's campaign rallies super spreader events. Biden has not commented on his supporters taking part in large-scale gatherings over the weekend.
You know, now, not that anybody, the majority of the press would ever ask a question like this. But yeah, Mr. Biden, excuse me, sir. Yes, a question from Newsmax, the Voice of Texas. Chris Salcedo here, sir. Yes, can you please, sir, tell us about your super spreader events out there, Mr. Biden? Yes, all of your supporters jumping out in the streets, many of them without masks, no social distancing. Where are you going? He's just walking. He won't take any questions. Oh. That's okay. The most transparent president in my lifetime, Donald J. Trump, sits down with you folks at ABC, NBC, CBS, sits down with the New York Times, got goodness knows why. I can't fathom why he does that. You people aren't legitimate. And then here's Beijing Biden events over the weekend. Oh, nobody wants to talk about that. And guess what, folks? ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News doesn't want to ask. No wonder. I'm going to read this before we go to break. You can keep the music up, Russell. Go ahead. On Newsmax.com, the headline screams, Newsmax TV makes iPhone's top 10 apps. Gee, I wonder why. Back in a minute. Chris Salcedo's show on the Voice of Texas and Newsmax TV.